Hi, everyone. This is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery. I'm excited to have Sridhar Ramaswamy, who's currently the CEO and co-founder of Neeva, an ad-free and deeply personal consumer-focused search service built with privacy at the foundation. He was earlier with Google as the company's senior vice president of advertising and commerce, where he oversaw all of Google's advertising and commerce products, including search, display, and video advertising, analytics, shopping, payments, and travel. Sridhar grew up in India and holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and he also earned his master's and PhD degree in computer science from Brown University. Welcome to the show, Sridhar.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here, Rohit. Really appreciate your having me.
Awesome. So, you've been a veteran in Google, and you come from India, which is my native place. And how did you get into this crazy world of tech, and how did you get into Google?
Yeah, so I grew up in South India, and after some fits and starts, I got into IIT Madras. I tried twice. I didn't do well the first time, and I tried again. I got a CS degree from IIT Madras, and then came to do a PhD at Brown University on the East Coast of the US. I actually worked in research labs, Bell Communications Research and Bell Labs in New Jersey for about 5 years before moving out to the Valley to work for a startup. Google was my second company in the Valley that I joined. I worked for a company called Epiphany, which was your more classic .com boom and bust. I joined Google sort of after that. On the path, I did research for 10 years before switching over to being a software engineer. It comes from like this basic element of software, which is your ability to create useful tools for other people. That's fascinated me. And software is also very malleable. It is that's really attracted me and to sort of being in tech. I'm very much a software engineer.
I got it. And how did you get the chance to work in Google? Did you know somebody in Google during that time? How did you get that opportunity?
So Google had a ridiculously difficult interview process then. It was famously difficult. I did have a friend, my first manager at Epiphany. His name is Mehran Sahami, who submitted my application. But really, all that did was it got you an interview. You
Right.
had to survive the interview, just like 6+ hours of answering pretty difficult questions on on a whiteboard. It was really a bit of a gauntlet. But I got to the Google team after getting through this interview. But I did get the opportunity because I knew someone personally that was already at Google, Mehran.
Right, very very interesting, and I still understand that it's not easy to get in Google. The interview process is still very very difficult. How was your experience working at Google? And you handled more than 10,000 people in the company. How was that experience all about?
Yeah, leadership at that kind of level is surreal because you have enormous impact on so many people and on very, very large businesses at that kind of a scale. You learn a lot about what it takes to be a good leader. See, some senior leaders fall victim to sort of not ever giving hard feedback, of always wanting to be seen as the nice person, of not being demandable enough. Those things work only when there is no problem with the business. Um, I learned a lot about what it took to attract great people into the team, about how you kept them, how you motivated them, how you gave positive feedback to encourage people, but also how you gave negative feedback um, when the situation was called for, and really set the bar for what you were expecting from people. It can be overwhelming, but it is also a very rewarding experience because you see how much impact you have on the world quarter after quarter. Because you not only have all of these people that depend on you, kind of that are part of your team, but also the overall impact that your team has on the world. The Google Ads team moves several $100 billion worth of GMV every year. This is the value of the goods that are being transacted as a result of ads. Um, and so it's a very rewarding but also very humbling experience to deal with an organization that large.
Right. Interesting. And you talked about giving negative feedback to your peers and all. I worked in teams, and sometimes becomes a little difficult to. It's easy to give positive feedback, but any thoughts on how do you handle giving negative feedback in a company with such high, ambitious people like in Google?
Yeah, so this is a difficult problem. I acknowledge that. And it is, first of all, it's really important to understand that um, not giving like feedback for improvement. I would less call it negative feedback. That was a poor choice of phrase on my part. It is more constructive feedback about what can be done better. First of all, the thing that you have to understand is that shying away from difficult conversations is bad for you and is bad for the relationship that you want to have. You want to be able to discuss difficult topics also. And any team that is of a non-trivial size has lots of these kinds of issues. Things cannot be going perfectly. So first
Yeah.
is this realization that being able to be honest about expectations is important. That's part one. Part two is making your expectations clear, ideally beforehand. You don't want to go surprise somebody that you're expecting something that they then did not do. You always want to make sure that you have common expectations. So setting that up is also important. Having processes that make it clear when things are not going well is the next part. So you have to be open. You have to set up processes that highlight where things are not going well. Then comes the tough, honest conversations about what we could have done differently or how expectations were not met. So if you have sort of a framework like this of not avoiding hard conversations, having clear expectations, having it be clear when expectations are not met, and engaging in a spirit of we need to get to the bottom of this, and here are things that you could have done better, we could have done better, is the framework that you need to have these difficult conversations when you're offering constructive feedback for how people can do better. In
Got it.
general, you should not surprise people with negative feedback
Right.
because you didn't make expectations clear. I would say that's a really important part.
Got it. That's interesting. And you had a long stint in Google, and then you moved to Greylock. How was your experience in Greylock as a venture partner?
Yeah, I was a venture partner. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but the voice is a little different. Yeah. So, Sridhar, you had a long stint at Google, and then you decided to move to Greylock. How's your experience there as a venture partner?
Uh, I only had a brief stint at Greylock as a venture partner before we started Neeva. I'm a part-time venture partner. Greylock is one of the best venture institutions in the world, and learning from a group of very talented people, Ashim, Sarah, Reed, and many others like them, was and is an amazing experience. The startup world is changing a lot. How companies are funded now and how quickly they grow today is very different from how things were 5 years. So it was a privilege to be a venture partner full time at Greylock. But then Vivek and I started Neeva soon afterwards, and so I'm very much part time at Greylock now.
Got it. And how do you look at the current fundraising mania, especially the funding has really spiked in the last couple of years. In fact, in COVID, I thought the funding would really go down, but it really peaked up and even in a country like India, where there are a lot of investments which are gone to Reliance Industries and all over the world as well. But what are your thoughts on this?
So I think it is a consequence of the fact that people are realizing there are giant companies to be created even now. So much of our world, whether it is finance or enterprise software or even consumer software, is being disrupted in a massive way by how many things are moving online. Literally, all of the activities that we used to do offline, whether it is getting food, getting groceries, all of these things are banking, all of these things are moving online. And so you see a ton of companies being created. At one level, you can argue that too much money is being invested into startups, and not all of them are going to be enormously successful. It's just not possible. But a VC's way of looking at this is to say, yes, the likelihood that one specific company is going to be a mega hit is lower than, say, 3 years ago. But on the other hand, there are a ton of mega hits being produced. Robinhood is just talking about IPO at a pretty impressive valuation. And there are a ton of other companies, DoorDash, Instacart, that are all at the cusp of being like pretty amazing companies if they are not already. And so I think the fundraising and the investing reflects the fact that there is a gold rush because these amazing companies are being created. 10, 12 years ago, I don't think we all realize that Salesforce would be such a big hit, or Slack would be such a big hit. I think it's because of the fact that there are so many, companies being created with 30, 40, $50 billion market cap that I think you're seeing the fundraising mania. I think it's just natural. As I said, there are still more companies like this to be created.
Very interesting. And you left Google earlier there as a senior vice president, and you went on to build Neeva. You could have looked at the process of building a traditional SaaS company, but you looked at solving a problem where creating a search engine without any ads. How did you go about building Neeva? And who are your target customers?
Yeah. Neeva was created out of a desire to create a simpler, better product for a very important problem. All of us take search for granted. It's just something that we do without thinking a whole lot about it. We have taken the business model of search also for granted. And Vivek and I just sort of came to the realization that we could create a much better and very different product if we started with different principles. So that's how we created Neeva, because we thought that mainstream search was no longer about the searcher, it was about the advertiser. We hit upon this bold model of having consumers become customers because we thought that that was the best way to drive alignment between the search engine and the searcher. So Neeva is the world's first ads-free, private subscription search engine. We announced last week that we were widely available in the US. Anyone can go to neeva.com and sign up for it. But at its core, it is a product that focuses on only you. And it's also a reflection of the times. The last 20 years in tech have been all about preserving option value. Companies want to say they're customer first. They also want to show ads. They also want to package up data and sell it. It's become increasingly difficult for consumers to tell who is on their side. We want to create a simpler, better product. And that's really how Neeva came to be. Our early target customers are people that want an alternative to search. Up to 25% of people in the US, for example, have tried a different search engine in the last month or so. That's a lot of people. And so these people are the ones for whom we want to offer a simpler, better service. Among the people that show a lot of enthusiasm for Neeva are people that care for privacy. Parents love Neeva a lot because they love the ads-free experience and want their children to have the same kind of experience. And you can think of Neeva as a little bit of a countercultural movement that is saying that this ad-supported ecosystem might not be the best for the user and the customer. And if you look back on history, people like Netflix or HBO, they have created genuinely superior products because of their business model, because of their relentless focus on the customer. Um, we hope to create in Neeva companies that are similar to a Costco, to a Netflix, to an HBO, high quality product that come with no strings attached and no worries.
Right. Interesting. And you talked about a subscription-based model. So, are you looking to charge, B2B companies for this particular service, or something like what Superhuman does with a superior experience?
Yeah, so initially we are targeting consumers,
Okay.
and our price point, we wanted the product to be affordable. Our price point is $4.95 a month, and the average Neeva consumer searches like a dozen times a day. It's a daily use function,
Right.
and we felt that a fair number of consumers would want to try it. Obviously, we've done sort of market research in terms of how many people will want to pay for a search product and so on and so forth. Um, Selling to businesses is also in our roadmap. It is not the most immediate goal right now, but we for a business user, we allow them to bring in their own data, whether it's sitting in Google Drive or Office 365 or Dropbox, GitHub, Figma, Slack, and we want to give you like this one place where you can find everything that matters to you.
Got it. And while you're building the product, how did you go about validating your idea, and how do you get to know that you're the right product market fit for this particular product that you're building?
Something as big as this, there is a lot of uncertainty because we are talking about a product that could potentially serve like every human being.
Right.
So we did things like how many people were unhappy with the current state of search, how many people thought there were too many ads, how many people would say that they would pay for a subscription search engine. So we did lots of user interviews. We also did lots of survey work. It's really a combination of these that gave us the confidence that there was a market for this product.
Got it. And I understand that it's pre-revenue right now. You've already raised more than $70 million. How did you go about with launching the product and get your first, say, 1,000 users?
So all our users have been acquired by organic marketing. We do a lot of we get covered a lot because this is a hot topic and people
Right.
care about search a lot. It is an important topic. And so, as I said, all of our user growth comes from word of mouth, comes from like our coverage in the media. It's essentially organic marketing that we don't pay for. Hundreds of thousands of people have signed up to be trialers and testers of the product. We are, adding 10,000 users almost every week at this point. And so there is sufficient momentum, but we don't actually spend advertising dollars. It would be funny if we did, but we
Right.
don't spend any ad dollars getting Neeva users.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I was wondering how does the internet search work for Neeva?
So part of Neeva's challenge, part of anybody's challenge when they're creating a new search engine is that the definition of a search engine has evolved. It includes a lot more functions. People expect a search engine to be a calculator, to be a currency converter, to be a flight status checker, to be able to find images, local results. So we work with a number of third-party providers, as does Google or Bing,
Right.
for things like local, things like stocks. We also license web search from Bing, but we are also building our own stack for things like personal data indexing or for web search. There are things that you can do in the context of a non-ads based search that you cannot do with like a traditional search engine. So in areas like shopping, for example, we are investing a lot into our own tech so we can create a superior experience. So Neeva really is like a combination of existing services plus a lot of new things that we are building from scratch ourselves.
Right. And how many users does Neeva have right now?
So we have over 10,000 users. As I said, that number is growing very rapidly because we are openly available in the US. And so this is an exciting phase of the company where you're like growing by, many tens of percent every week, if not every month. And so we expect that user number to keep going up substantially over the next few months.
And again, how many search engine queries are you is the company handling right now?
So we don't talk about how many queries, but it's easy to infer some of these numbers. I already told you, most users do more than a dozen queries a day. So if you do the math, that gives you an idea of roughly how many queries per day.
Current. And I understand there are other companies also like DuckDuckGo, which looks into privacy. What can people do to increase their privacy online?
So governments are trying to give options to people. Um, First of all, even defining privacy is a challenging topic because this term has been hijacked by the advertising industry and by tech companies. So most people don't even know how to begin to think about it. We have a simple definition of privacy in a Neeva context. Our take is that online privacy means that when you interact with a site, with an entity, only that entity should know about your interaction with them. It's not dissimilar to how like we think about privacy when we have a conversation with a friend. Our expectation is that when we discuss something with a friend, they're not going to go repeat it, post about it on social media, at least not with good friends anyway.
Right.
um, and so our take is that at one level privacy should be that if you talk to one site, it's between you and the site. Other people have no business knowing about it. That's a reasonable expectation. Given this, what are things you can do? Uh, Certainly, using a private search engine, whether it's a Duck or a Neeva, helps because a search is often the starting point for lots and lots of work. And whenever you click on an ad, for example, everybody else begins to know about it. So that's a start. The second one is how you protect your privacy when you're on a particular website. I highly recommend things like extensions from Privacy Badger or even from Neeva that does tracking prevention. It prevents third parties from snooping on what you're doing when you're on a particular site. You'll be shocked, but if you go to mainstream websites, thousands of other companies try to keep track of what you're doing. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And so you went to some site and said, I want to interact with a Sports Illustrated, with a CNN, and all of a sudden you find all of these other people are looking at what you're doing. There are perfectly good tools that are available, for this. I would say these are probably like the two simplest things that people can do to make sure that their data stays private. Um, there's security related stuff that honestly people should do. Using a password manager will actually be a big help for your privacy because if you don't have it, you're going to end up repeating the same password at multiple places. So your data security is at risk. And so privacy and security are interrelated. But if you were to ask me, what are like the top three things that someone should do? One, as I said, would be to use something like a privacy badger or a Neeva tracking prevention extension that gives you privacy. Second one would be use a password manager. It's about security, but it'll still help your privacy. And I guess the third thing, which is more again on the security side, is I would say for your most critical accounts, for example, your bank account or your cloud storage account, you should make sure that you have two-factor authentication, ideally hardware-driven two-factor authentication. So it's a lot harder to break into those things. So privacy and security go hand in hand. but they're very important, especially to prevent things like identity theft, which happens very, very often. It is incredibly painful to deal with.
Right. Right. I think you pointed it very rightly about password manager, privacy badger, and making sure you have two-factor authentication.
For your
Just
most important accounts.
yeah, no, absolutely. And you talked about the role of the government. Last year there were, I mean, 2 years back there was a big controversy about Facebook and Cambridge Analytical data scandal, and the government has definitely spoken to Google and Facebook and other companies on how they are treating consumers' data. Do you think the government should be involved more deeply into the data protection, data privacy, and do you think going forward, uh, there could be a breakup of these big internet companies?
Well, it's a complicated question with lots of different topics. I think the government should definitely play a role in data privacy simply because the internet is not going to regulate itself.
Yeah.
We have not, even the big tech companies have not done a great job in the last 20 years when it comes to data privacy and securing customers. Okay, nobody is going to. So the current situation is not acceptable. So yes, GDPR was flawed, um, and yes, we sort of need more, options. We need more carefully thought out things. But as I said, it is not going to come from private tech companies. So the government has to play a muscular role in making sure that there is competition and in data privacy. And I think the fact of the matter is that many tech companies are at a size where they're very large and they're very monopolistic. And I think it is an active hindrance for innovation. So I think there is definitely a role the governments also have to play in the topic of antitrust. Um, there's a lot of activity in the US, as is there in Europe and also in India. So I
Right.
won't comment on these, but I think people are waking up to the fact that A, the internet is not going to regulate itself, and B, the largest of the tech companies have too much power and too much influence over things that honestly are better suited for the government. So you're definitely going to see more action on both these fronts.
Right, correct. And Shraddha, you've been an immigrant in US. You've done very well for yourselves. What should be the responsibility of an entrepreneur and an immigrant towards society so that they can do more good. Obviously, US is a land of immigrants, but what are your thoughts on the responsibility?
Yeah, I'm an immigrant. I came to the US about 32 years ago.
Right.
I'm a naturalized citizen. I got enormous opportunities that I'm very grateful for. 30 years ago, if you were to tell me that, Sundar would be the CEO of Google and Satya would be the CEO of Microsoft, we would not quite have believed the person that was saying that. So we've been given enormous opportunities, and I include myself in that list. Um, I think it is important for us to understand our history, both in India and in the United States. There are tons and tons there are many people that simply have not been afforded the same opportunity. And I think it is important that we try, in the context of both our companies and in our personal lives, to make sure that we stand up for the rights of others to have opportunities to succeed. There is no reason to believe that any young person is unmotivated about success just because they happen to be born to somebody, or that they grew up in a particular town. I grew up in small towns all over South India. And to me, that is the biggest message. We have an obligation, we have a duty to give back. We do at Neeva, we do small things. We are a small company. We try very hard to make sure that we have a diverse workforce. We support programs that help people get good jobs even after they get a college degree. And we know we should do more. So I would say that is the biggest message that I would have, which is the fact that we have access to all of these amazing opportunities is a gift for all of us. And we need to think that there are many others that just simply don't have similar kinds of opportunities. And it's our duty to put our hands up and help.
Yeah, no, I think very, very rightly put. So, should I quickly want to do the top three, or what's your favorite business
Yes,
book?
uh, there are quite a few, but I would say the book that moved me a lot, I learned from a lot, is a book on negotiating called Getting More. The author is Stuart Diamond. There are two or three other books like this, but it really teaches you that negotiating is about both parties winning. It's like trade. When you negotiate, you want to make sure that both the parties come out thinking, I got a good deal here. And so that was a profoundly moving book, because it is also about human psychology. And once you read books like this, you're just a much better negotiator because you're a kinder negotiator.
Yeah, great. I think I need to read this book. I'll put that in the show notes and hopefully get to read this book more. And Shraddha, if you could go back in time when you started building Neeva, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
Every startup has a few twists and and turns. We started on the looking at the enterprise side and then shifted over to being a consumer product. I think every startup is always a combination of planning for a future, but also taking care of things that are more independent. I'm pretty happy with where we are, but if you were to ask me, I would say even the US launch that we did, we should have pushed to be faster. I think it's one of those things where getting your software, getting your product at the hands of lots of people really does help a lot. So, and that is the one thing that I wish we could have pushed harder on sooner.
Got it. And your very favorite online tools, for example, Gmail, Slack, so.
There are quite a few, but I thought about your question. If I think about your question a little bit, I would say probably the browser is my favorite tool. It is so versatile. You can do so many things with it. And in 2021, I think there is so much innovation still waiting to happen. I find that fascinating.
Got it. And Shraddha, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Neeva?
Well, first of all, I encourage folks, especially in the US, to try out Neeva, neeva.com. Sign up is super, super easy. And if you want to drop me a line, you can DM me on Twitter. Or my name is a little funky, Ramaswamy Sridhar, but it's easy to reach from at Neeva. You can also drop me a line at sridhar@neeva.com.
We'll put that in the show notes. Shraddha, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Thank you, Rohit. Take care.